Hello, my name is Alex Telford, and in this tutorial we are going to be taking a look at how to create a post-apocalyptic cityscape for a racing game in Blender and Unity. Now in this tutorial, this is going to be a slightly more advanced tutorial than what we normally do, so there will be some time lapses and we will skip out a few sections, such as when we're going to make our texture maps. I'll show you how to make a few, and then I'll create the rest of them off recording or in time-lapse, and that way it will save you sitting through the entire process, especially for you more advanced users. Now this tutorial is going to be very focused on modular workflow and sort of efficient planning and such like that, just to make it a little more awesome. Now we did have a tutorial on creating game environments a little bit earlier this year in, I believe, 3D World 159 or 160, and that one there we covered how to create games in Blender and how to have them looking alright in real time. However, we didn't go into anything awesome. We didn't go into normal maps, we didn't go into RGB channel splitting, shadow maps, or anything along those lines. So we're going to be creating this scene that we've got here. Well, we're going to be creating a few. So the environment, because it's a good idea to have an idea in mind of what we're going to create. I've already got an idea in mind. What I intend to do is I have a city that is surrounded by a sort of a wasteland kind of area, and in the center of the city, or maybe slightly offset from the center of the city, we have a slightly more sci-fi kind of area. And those three different tone ranges is going to give us a lot to play with, and it will allow me to show you some various techniques, because making a wasteland is significantly different from making a city, which is significantly different again from making a sci-fi kind of area. So yeah, that's kind of what we're aiming for. Now we may not get all three of them done. We certainly aren't going to get an entire city built in a tutorial. However, we want to get a lot done, so chances are I will make a few blocks of city. So you probably, you've walked around the block a few times. So we'll make a couple of streets. We'll make a few variations of buildings, and I'm going to give you all the techniques and resources you need to know to go out and make your own. So if you are having trouble at any point during this tutorial, remember the resource files will be available. You can download these. The texture maps will quite likely not be included, simply for the fact that I will, due to time constraints, I'm going to have to use some of my textures I have in my library, and I can't guarantee that they are all available to be redistributed. So if you are having trouble with any of the texture map creation, then by all means flick me an email and I will do my best to get back to you. If you want to contact me about any Blender related questions, you can go to cgcookie.com, or support.cgcookie.com will be the support group, and just write attention Alex and I will do my best to get back to you with that one. Now if you have any troubles with the actual texture map creation itself, there are plenty of ways to get in touch with me about that one. You can actually just contact 3D World and get them to send the email to me, or alternatively you can look me up from my own page, metallics.co.nz, and contact me there, because I understand that there's going to be a few people that are having a bit of trouble with these tutorials. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start planning. So when working with a modular environment, we really want to plan out every texture before we even get into the 3D program. So by the time we get in, we have our atlas already sorted, we have all our textures there and ready, and once we get into 3D, we'll actually set up a shader, and then we will make our objects from there, which is fantastic. Alright, so with all of that out of the way, what we can do now is talk about our concept here. So this concept is created by me, which is unusual, as I'm not a concept artist. This is actually the only environment concept art I have ever done. So we're actually going to be taking a look at how I created this piece. But you can feel free to skip ahead to the next section rather than sit through and watch me create concept art. But I felt I should include it as it might be useful to some other people who've never created concept art before, and yeah, something like that. So this piece is based sort of on the edge of the city, more towards the wasteland kind of area, and you can see we have a few effects going on. We have this sort of fog effect going in there, and we have some destroyed buildings. The sky, I don't like the sky at all, but we'll probably make it a little bit more brighter. And we have these, you know, sort of more destroyed areas, so sort of a bit of cracked ground, some bit of ivy on the buildings, and things like that. These are very easy to create in Game Engine. So if you've never worked with modular environments before, jump on over to unitycookie.com, and there's a whole bunch of tutorials and such there. And yes, it is Unity related, but they use Blender a lot there. And if you have a look around some of them, you'll definitely pick up a lot about modular environments. This is sort of a more advanced thing here. But if you haven't done modular environments before, that's perfectly fine. We'll be looking into it from a more basic standpoint before we get into more advanced stuff. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab a drink. Alright, so with this environment here, when working with a modular environment, what we do is we break up our environments into textures. So normally, if I just go, make sure I'm in the right window. Alright, so normally when we are making an environment, we'll do things like, alright, so this is a ground. This is a building, and we've got buildings and such. And yeah, this is fine when making production stuff. So, you know, buildings and such. But that is not what we want. What we want to do is we want to break up textures, because we want to make our textures first and then we'll make our environment from that. Which sounds a little weird, but once we get into 3D, that's going to make a lot more sense for you guys that haven't worked with modular environments before. Alright, so working with textures, we can say here is a texture, here is another texture. We have this texture here, and we have a whole bunch of windows. And from experience, and of course a door and those things, and plants. From experience, I can tell you that that is all the textures you would need in the scene. Perhaps another one for these pieces here. Now you're probably thinking, no, you're completely wrong, Alex. This one here is completely different to this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Why would you only want one texture for that? It's going to look very flat. And that is when we get into vertex colors. Now vertex color will allow us to much better create things. So we can take this and we will tint it black, or tint it a darker colour, and we get this. We'll tint it brown, we get this one here. We tint it blue, we get this one here. And we can do that with vertex colouring with very minimal effort. Now windows, on the other hand, we need a lot of windows. So you can see there's a lot of different windows in environments. Giving window variation and having the same texture as the wall background will certainly help make things a lot easier. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways that we can create this in a game. The first way is to create the structure, extrude in the windows, and we'll map in the texture. And of course these are all blocked out into sections to make it tile in whatever game engine we want. There is, by the way, a way to tile segments of a atlas using the floor and frac values of a shader, but that's getting very advanced shader networking stuff, and I want to steer clear of that for this tutorial, as I'm sure you can understand. So yeah, that's one way, so we extrude things in, and this gets a little higher probably if there's a lot of things. Now this is perfectly fine in game engines such as Unity, because it has occlusion colouring, and then what that means is if you can't see it, it won't render it, and that works fantastic. Now that is a Unity Pro feature, so if you don't have Unity Pro, then you're going to probably want to do another method, which is you create one piece and that has all of your windows textured on it, and with that there you just leave it. So it doesn't look anywhere near as good as this one, however it will render in real time without much lag, and you can even use that on mobile devices. So yeah, we're going to be looking at this method here. If you guys want to learn more about this, there is hundreds of tutorials on creating this. BlenderGuru.com has a tutorial on creating a city, and that one there will work with the game environments using that. There's a lot of circles I just drew. Undo. Yeah. So I hope this is all making sense so far. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot of stuff that's going to go on in this tutorial. But you know, with that all introduced and such, we are going to move on. So let's get in and do some research before we do our concept. So I will show you how to create this image, but we'll get to that in a minute. What I want to do is do some research first. So before we do our research, well, sort of an introduction to doing the research, is we need to find out what we are doing. So let's just write a few notes. This here is post-apocalyptic. Alright, so this is a theme, and let's just go invert that background, and I'm just gonna darken that just so I can write on the top of it. Alright, this is also going to be a racetrack. If you read the if you're reading the magazine, if you don't have a magazine in front of you, by the way, you can follow along just fine. There was just a few notes at the start of like what we were doing and such. Alright, so it's a post-apocalyptic racetrack for a game engine, and yeah, we're going to be looking into that. Now, also, there is this thing here is an old racetrack. It's, you know, city's been abandoned and it's now being used as rebels. So it's an old city. It's an old city, and there's rebels that are now using it as a racetrack. So that means we're going to need to have signs. You know, like the big arrow things. Go that way. That kind of stuff. And let's just draw a nice little box around that. Yeah, there we go. Nice and pretty sign. Okay, so we're going to have signs. We're going to have wide roads. We're going to have interesting roads. By wide roads, I mean they have to be a little bit wider than normal to allow for things like passing and such. So it's not exactly realistic, but not as wide as this. You don't have to be that wide. It can be just this wide. But so that wide. So it has to be interesting roads. So yeah, they have to be slightly wider so that we can have passing, more interesting effects sort of stuff. And they have to be, when I say interesting, I'm referring to they need to have sort of, one road goes here, another road is going underneath it, another road's coming over top of it here. Sort of highway structure is very it's very interesting for the driver to go around. If they have to do a loop-to-loop and go over top of the area they've just been, they're going to be like, hey, I was just there before, and it's a cool experience. If they're just on the same flat plane the entire time, it's going to get really mind-numbing. So yeah, we're going to have to build some bridges and such, and maybe some little tunnels and things to make it a little more interesting. Basically, we'll make as much of the city as we can in the next couple of hours. Okay, so that's a racetrack. Yeah, that's about all that we need, really. So it's going to be a little bit overgrown. So by overgrown, I mean not forest. So it's not going to be as massively overgrown as some examples I'm going to show you soon. I just want a little bit, when I say overgrown, a little bit of foliage. Because foliage is a cool technique and I want to teach you it. So I want to have a little bit, but I don't want heaps and heaps of it. Because that's just going to be silly. It's not silly, but it's not the effect I want in this tutorial. Yeah, especially because that's when it gets into some rather complex issues. When you have a lot of foliage, you get, there's too much alpha for it to go through. So you don't want more than maybe 6 layers of transparency for a surface, because that's going to cause some issues. Alright, so let's take a quick look at an example. Before we go and do our references, I'm going to take a quick look at an example of a scene. Oh, there it is. Right, so this is a scene that I created, and this one here is not perfect. You can see I've got issues up there with the shadows and such, very glossy. But this is a scene that I made in a couple of hours. And that included creating texture maps, the research, the everything. So this is the stuff we're going to be looking into. So we're going to look into all of these things, really. We're going to make something similar to this, actually, out in the wastelands. Alright, so let's point out a few things in this before we get into research. Let's take a look at the silhouette. So if I grab these, we delete those, and I just come and turn off my... Right, so ignoring all the little signs and stuff, I'm going to turn off those. Cool. We're just looking at the silhouette. So, cool. There we go. Alright, so you can see that there's an interesting silhouette to this scene, and that's kind of what I was aiming for when creating this. With these little wires and such, it's not hard to create. This is very, very easy. It's very low poly, And yes, that's this wireframe. And yeah, this is kind of stuff we're going to be looking into creating. So when you're doing your research for environments, look at silhouette, look at texture detail. Just alright, cool, there we go. Alright, so look at where you can reuse textures. Those lines are annoying me now. I don't know why they popped up. Oh well, it's not important. Was looking fine before. I swear it's Camtasia. Camtasia seems to do so many annoying things. Alright, so there's a few things. So if we just press play, you can see we've got a few issues with the ground plane there, but actually a few issues with the textures. I believe the problem is I have the wrong one selected. Whoa. Alright. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's happening now. But ignoring that, you know, we've got these little bits of foliage around here. We've got like planes with detail on it, on things. Bits of graffiti such as this. And there is more than 6 layers of transparency in this, but only at the background. And when it gets to this, when it gets to, you know, so many layers of transparency in the background, that's fine. Not an issue. So yeah, we're going to look into this kind of stuff. Alright, so it's getting a little off topic now. So yeah, I'm going to take a look at textures. Oh, that's spelled wrong. Texture reusage. So that's our atlasing and such like that. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. So let's jump in and we're going to do a bit of research. Research is always fun. Alright. Now, what you do is you grab a whole bunch of images and you grab a green and red pencil in Photoshop and you highlight things you like and things you dislike about an image. Things that are useful, things that will not be useful. And doing this will much better prepare you for what you are planning on doing. Alright, so for example, this ground here, I like this. I like the fact that it's cracked. I like these sort of things that come around. They've got a little bit dangling off them, and that's really nice. I like that. I like this sort of detail that's on top of the roofs. I don't like this much foliage. It's not what we're looking for. However, a little bit like this is quite nice. And maybe one of those. This kind of broken bridge, I would love to include one of them. And a little flag on the top would be quite nice as well. Broken windows. And yeah, that's all I'm going to mention for this. Cars. I'm not going to include cars in this tutorial, simply for the fact that cars take a while. We could probably make maybe 1 or 2 cars in the same time it will take us to make the entire environment. So yeah, moving on to the next one. This one here. And by the way, I'm not. You can find all of these on Google Images. That's where I went from. Just search for apocalyptic city, and you'll find everything. So I apologize if I haven't credited the image source on some of these. Yeah, they are on Google Images. I found them on my hard drive from last time I made one. Last time I made a apocalyptic city. So yeah, flags, I like that. I like a little bit of this ivy going around. Probably not this much, but a little bit. These things have like a plane that's crashed into it. That's a nice touch. This, I'm not sure what that is. I assume it's like a fortress of some sort, you know, a little fort that someone's made. That's quite nice. Yeah. Some of these buildings look a little funky. That's alright. I'm going to show you how to make some buildings. Alright, so this one here, I just like the whole image here. It's all pretty much what we're aiming for. I like these God rays that are coming in, you know, the sunbeam light kind of thing. I probably won't be looking into that. I want to steer away from image effects in this because not everyone has Unity Pro, but we'll be looking at maybe some things, or maybe I'll bring the result into Photoshop and just show you some general color correction things that you can use in the game engine. Whatever we decide to do at that stage is perfectly fine. Alright, so these silhouettes are very nice. It's nice. A little too much foliage for what we're looking for, but I do like this sort of mashed up ground and these sort of wider streets. Okay, so these buildings. These are probably a little too clean, so let's try to clean. Don't want any rubbish in the scene. It's apocalyptic. There's no rubbish in Apocalypse. Basically, it's been too long for rubbish to still be there. These little signs are nice. Little signs and things that are still lying around. Just gives it that sense of, you know it a little better. You feel a little more connected to the scene. Alright, so okay, these are too clean. The buildings, they are not destroyed enough. Some of them have nice little, we could use something similar, but you know, we want something more like this, and this, and this. Definitely some little subway areas. And we'll have some bits of rubble, but probably not too much, because it gets very heavy eventually. Okay, moving on. I love this transition area. This sort of fog effect that we're going on is cool. Probably looks like I'm highlighting the building, but I'm actually highlighting the fog. Crashed vehicle, this kind of mash-up effect that we've got going on, of just things that have been put together. That is awesome. Yeah, don't really have anything I don't like about this. Apart from people, we won't be putting people on there. That's not really a critique kind of thing. So, you know, we won't be putting them in, but I'd like to. Right, so moving on. These fences, they're cool. It's kind of buildings that are crashed onto another building. It's also cool. Fallen over, just rubble. Probably not this much, but yeah. So you can see it's just a little too much destruction in there for what I want in this. Alright. So, this one here. I like this damage to these buildings. Tank, I probably will put a tank in there eventually, but not during this tutorial. So yeah, destruction, bits of paper flying around, that'll be cool. I would love to put a woman in there as well. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those to put in. Not one that's that I can put in this tutorial open source anyway. Alright. So this one from here, these are from Enslaved Odyssey to the West, I think it's called, apart from that one, which is a cool little game. I haven't actually played it, but I've heard good things about it. Alright, so this is all game engine stuff. So you can see these, I like these, and you can see where that texture has been repeated again and again and again. It's the same texture, which is cool. We're going to be doing the exact same thing. And you can see we've got an extra one there, which is also down there. And yeah, it's just some cool little techniques that you can use to do that. Too much foliage. I don't want that much foliage. You probably think I've got something against foliage. I actually love nature, but not for this tutorial. Okay. Yeah, silhouette's quite nice. Probably want to be more focused on the roads though. This thing here, I don't like massive trees out the side of a building. That's just, I don't find that very realistic at all. Yeah, these little cone things that are around, I really like this image. All this stuff is fantastic. Don't put any of this in. If you put any like logos that are from actual companies in there, you could get in trouble unless you're just doing your own little project. So yeah, we won't be putting in like an LG logo or anything like that. We might write up our own little logos, but that's okay. Yeah, so bits of grass like this is fine. Flocks and birds in the sky, that's always quite nice. Nice little touch, stuff like that. These little poles that are just around, it's always cool. It's very annoying when you're in a racing game and you crash into one of these little poles that are just there and it stops your car. But it adds a nice little touch, adds that level of challenge. Alright. So, moving on to the last image. I have about, I think, 180 reference images for this project. So, yeah. Alright, so this one here, we already did that one. I'm pretty sure that was on, like, one of these. Yeah, there it is. Might have done it twice, I have no idea. Alright. Don't really like much about this image at all. Oh, these things, that's why I downloaded it. Because we have these little blocks that are just stacked up. Alright, so little barricades are nice. These kind of stacked up buildings. Don't really like the grass on top of buildings. Now this thing is awesome. If I could make this in a game environment, that would be cool. But unfortunately, we won't have time for that. So anyways, bridges, nice. So yeah, you see I'm pointing out a lot of things. We're not focusing heavily on poly count for this tutorial. Obviously you can optimize things a lot more than what I'm going to be showing you, but we won't be, I'll throw in a broken bridge or two and that's perfectly fine. As long as you don't exceed like 2 million triangles, you're fine. That's for your whole scene, everything in it. Depending on your target platform. So obviously that's targeting some more powerful computers. But obviously on your iPhone, if you try and put a scene with 2 million triangles into it, you're going to run into some issues. Namely, it will crash because it will run out of memory, unless you can severely optimize things. Yeah, I don't make games for cell phones, so I'm not entirely sure on that one. I should probably look into that. So yeah, that's all our research done. That's all our planning. So we can move on to the next section. Alright, so there's one more bit that we're going to cover, and then we're going to get into showing how we did the concept art. And that is this one here. Let's turn off this. Let's turn off all of that. Alright. Okay. So, here we have a map of Wellington. As you can see, it's a really nice big map. Now, I chose Wellington because I live in Wellington. Yeah, it's a good place to live because Weta Digital's over there, and Weta is awesome. It's yeah, right there. There's Weta Digital. Oh, I thought I just quit Camtasia. Small heart attack. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be making a post-apocalyptic Wellington, which is fantastic. Everyone likes Wellington, apart from Wellingtonians. Just funny that. Yeah, so we're going to be doing this, and what we want to do is we want to first map out. You probably saw the heat map I did before, but we want to map out where we want each area. So if I bring this out, you can see I've made a little overlay, a little key there just to show what we've got. So we've got, you know, a forestry area around the outside. We have wastelands. Then we have abandoned city. And then we have this new kind of sci-fi-ish kind of area. And this is quite nice. It's you know, it's not too much sci-fi, it's not too much city, it's something that the computer can handle, especially when you use culling and such. And yeah, so we're not going to make the whole city, of course. We'll probably make like a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of this, and we'll put some together, mostly be separate, and yeah, we'll just see how we go. If we were to sit here and watch me make the entire game environment, that's going to take probably take me, I think, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to you know, of full time making this to a decent quality. And yeah, by the way, that 4 weeks sounds really short for making a game environment, which is, and that's where modular environments come in, because they're so much faster. Okay, so let's take a look at our track. Alright, so there's a little key that I have drawn up. You make sure you draw up a little key before you start doing things. This is for the racetrack. So you can see blue is for barricades. So, you know, we're going to put a barricade in these regions. Got light grey as a long cut, dark grey as a shortcut, and black as track. Probably doesn't make much sense at the moment, but it will do in a moment. Let's go, not that one. Let's go load up our track. So you can see, we can go around these main areas, and we'll come back around to the start. And there's some nice junctions up there, and there's another one down there, there, and these are, oh, and over there. And you know, there's like a little tunnel going through there, some highway regions, and those are quite nice to include, just for that extra level of detail. And here's all the shortcuts. So you can see I have a shortcut here, and I have a shortcut here. Now, a shortcut in a game is a region that's a little bit more tricky to get into. Obviously here we can go flying straight off into the shortcut, and then you'd have to navigate through a you know, a tighter alleyway kind of thing. This here is actually a fairly wide street, but I'll probably make it more of an alleyway. So you have to navigate through that, and when you get out this other side, if you've successfully gotten through the shortcut, you've shaved off a few seconds off your lap. And this one here, obviously, this would be a ramp, so it would either be a use once shortcut, use it once and then it gets blocked off for you, or it's just really hard to use, because as you can see, that's cutting off a fair chunk of the track. This here, I mean, you might as well cut off, you know, skip from there all the way up to there. Not quite there, maybe over about here is the length of time that it would be, considering the complexity of going around this edge. And we have up here, we have what's called a long cut. Now, a long cut is a region that looks like it's going to take less time, but it takes more time, unless you navigate it really, really well. If you navigate it well, then a long cut can actually become a shortcut, but a long cut is the region that will generally, for the average driver, take up more time to navigate, because maybe there's something in the way, maybe they have to slow down. You can see in particular this one here, so I'll just undo those. We have this, so it comes off looking all nice and you know, secrety, you know, like a semi-secret shortcut there. So someone comes off, come down to here, they're blocked off, they come down here, come through, and then they go. And this little region right here will catch them off guard, just because we are sneaky like that. And of course, just a few notes, you know, blue is a barricade, so just making sure that we've marked out barricades that we want. and the direction that the track will go by default. Alright, and that's how to make a racetrack. So yeah, if I'm going too fast for you, I sincerely apologise. Looking at the time, it's been 40 minutes and we've covered probably a couple of hours worth of stuff, so I get the feeling I'm going a little too fast here. But there is a lot to cover. We have an entire city to make, well, a couple of blocks anyways. So we'll probably make, you know, maybe we'll make this region here, or we might actually just go take like a region like this. So we've got a bit of wasteland in there, so like this area here will be wasteland, and we've got this area is going to be city, and then we've got the new area in here. So we might make a region like that. Kind of looks like a Pokeball, doesn't it? Yeah, Pokemon. Alright, yeah, so depending on how much time we get, I really hope we get lots of time, but we'll see how we go. I sincerely apologise if we don't get as much done as you are hoping, but yeah, we'll get as much done as possible. Okay, so we have done our references, we've looked at research, we have planned out what we want to do. We've also planned out our map, where our racetrack's going to go, what areas of what, and yeah, it's about time we actually get into the nitty-gritty stuff and actually start creating. So in the next little time-lapse video, we're going to be looking at how I went about creating this environment here. So we're going to look at how I made this concept art, I should say. And after that, we're going to create our texture maps. So we'll reiterate that. We will create our texture maps before our actual models. And we're going to talk more about that, more about the modular workflow when we get into that area. So let's go ahead and we will jump into the concept design time lapse.